There is a bird sitting on a wire above your head right now, and it knows your face. Welcome to Wild World Explorer, where we go deep into the most extraordinary creatures on this planet. Today, we are talking about crows. The creature that remembers your face forever. Not your car, not your jacket, your face. And once a crow decides it does not like you, it will teach its children to feel exactly the same way. That grudge can outlive you. But before we get to the part where a bird is quietly judging you on your morning commute, let us start at the very beginning. The crow belongs to the genus Corvus. That name comes from Latin and it simply means raven or crow. Scientists have identified around 45 species within this genus, and they are found on nearly every corner of the earth. The two most studied species are the American crow, known scientifically as Corvus brachyhynchos, and the carrion crow known as Corvus caron. When most people picture a crow, they are picturing one of these two. Now here is something that stops most people in their tracks. Crows have been scientifically proven to recognize individual human faces. Not silhouettes, not colors, faces. A team of researchers at the University of Washington actually tested this. They wore specific masks while trapping and tagging crows on campus. Weeks later, those same masked researchers walked through campus without touching a single crow. The crows dove at them, called out warnings, and followed them. Other crows that had never been trapped joined in because they had been told. Think about that for a moment. A bird with a brain the size of a walnut looked at a human face, stored it, communicated a threat to its community, and held that information across time. That is not instinct. That is memory, that is social intelligence. Scientists call this kind of behavior episodic, like memory. The ability to recall specific events involving specific individuals at specific times. It is a cognitive ability we once thought was exclusive to humans and a handful of large mammals. The crow shattered that assumption entirely, and honestly, it is just getting started. So we have established that crows remember faces and hold grudges, but to really understand why that is so extraordinary, we need to zoom out. We need to look at where crows sit in the animal kingdom, because once you see it, everything clicks. Crows belong to the family Corvidae. This family includes ravens, jays, magpies, jackdaws, and nutcrackers. It is one of the most successful bird families on Earth, and by most measures, it is also the most intelligent. Scientists who study animal cognition consistently rank corvids at the very top of the bird world, right alongside parrots, and in some tests they outhand PH-1ED1ERFORM both dogs and chimpanzees. Yes. A bird outhand PH-1ED1ERFORMED a chimpanzee on a cognitive test. Let that sit for a second. Now here is where it gets really interesting. Most animals with advanced intelligence have a large cerebral cortex. That is the outer layer of the brain that handles complex thinking, planning, and social behavior. Humans have a very large one, great apes have a significant one. But birds do not have a cerebral cortex at all. Their brain is structured completely differently. For a long time, scientists assumed that meant birds were cognitively limited. The logic seemed reasonable. No cortex, no complex thinking. Crows proved that logic wrong. What crows have instead is a region called the pallium, a dense cluster of neurons packed tightly in the forebrain. And in corvids, this region is remarkably large relative to their body size. The brain-to-body ratio of a crow is comparable to that of a chimpanzee, and not far behind that of a human. That tiny black head holds a neurological engine that rivals some of the most intelligent animals ever studied. Researchers now believe that the pallium in birds performs many of the same functions as the cortex does in mammals. Different architecture, same outcome. Evolution found two separate paths to intelligence, and crows walked one of them completely on their own. This is why crows are often described as the primates of the bird world. Not because they look like primates, but because they think in ways that were supposed to be exclusively ours. And that raises a question we will keep coming back to throughout this video. If they think like us, what exactly are they thinking about, now that we understand what kind of mind we are dealing with? The next question is obvious. Where exactly are these birds living? Where do you go to find a creature that thinks like a primate and watches you back? The answer might surprise you. You probably already live near one. Crows are found on nearly every continent on Earth. They thrive across North America, Europe, Asia, Africa, and Australia. The only major landmasses where you will not find them are South America and Antarctica. That is an extraordinary range for any single genus of animal. But what makes crows truly remarkable is not just how far they have spread. It is what kind of environments they have chosen to live in. Most wild animals retreat when humans expand. They lose habitat, they lose food sources, they disappear into shrinking patches of forest or grassland. Crows did the opposite. When humans built cities, crows moved in. When humans created farmland, crows followed the tractors. When humans filled suburban streets with garbage bins and fast food scraps, crows learned the weekly collection schedule. They are one of the very few wild species that has genuinely benefited from human civilization. And they did it not through physical adaptation but through behavioral intelligence, in forests and woodlands. Crows nest in tall trees and hunt across open ground. In coastal areas, they crack shellfish open by dropping them onto rocks from height. In cities, they have been observed waiting at pedestrian crossings, placing walnuts on the road so passing cars crack them. Then walking back to collect the pieces when the light turns red. They did not learn that from their parents. Individual crows figured it out, and then they taught others. This behavioral flexibility is what separates crows from most other birds. A parrot can learn tricks. A crow can solve a new problem it has never seen before, adapt the solution to its environment, and share that knowledge with its social group. In Japan, researchers documented urban crows using the entire city as a feeding and problem solving landscape. In the United States, crows have been observed adjusting their behavior city by city. Neighborhood by neighborhood, they are not just living alongside us, they are studying us, they are learning our patterns. Our schedules are habits, and they have been doing it for a very long time, so they are everywhere. They are watching us and their brains rival a chimpanzee. But what does this bird actually look like up close? Because when you really examine the physical body of a crow, every single detail tells a story. A fully grown American crow stands about 45 to 55 centimeters tall and weighs roughly 300 to 600 grams. That is not a large bird. A house cat could theoretically overpower one, but size is the least interesting thing about a crow. The first thing you notice is the color, all black, not just dark brown or very dark gray, pure deep. Iridescent black. In direct sunlight, a crow's feathers shift between purple, blue, and green. It is almost metallic. They do not look like a creature that needs to hide. They look like a creature that knows it does not need to. The beak is thick, slightly curved, and extremely strong. Crows use it like a multi-purpose tool. They pry open containers, probe soil, strip bark from branches, and manipulate objects with a level of precision that is unusual for a bird. The beak is not just for eating. It is for problem solving. The feet are strong and dexterous. Crows can hold food down with one foot while working on it with their beak, something most birds simply cannot do. This frees up their cognitive resources in the same way that hands freed up ours. Now the eyes. This is where it gets genuinely unsettling for some people. A crow's eyes face slightly forward, giving them a degree of binocular vision and depth perception that most birds lack. They can judge distance accurately. They can track movement with precision, and they are positioned in a way that allows the crow to look directly at you. Make eye contact and hold it. Most birds glance sideways. Crows look straight at you. Their visual system also detects ultraviolet light, a spectrum completely invisible to humans. This means they perceive a version of the world we literally cannot see. And then there is the brain itself, already discussed in terms of its structure. But the sheer density of neurons in that small skull translates into something visible in their behavior. Crows play, they slide down snowy rooftops and climb back up to do it again. They tease other animals for what appears to be amusement. They hide food and then pretend to hide it somewhere else if they think another crow is watching. That last one is called deception. And it requires imagining what another mind believes. Very few animals on Earth can do that. A crow that can deceive another crow is a crow that understands other minds exist. And once you understand that other minds exist, you start to build relationships with them. Complex ones. That is exactly what crows do. Crows do not live alone. They live in family groups, and those family bonds are genuinely strong. A mated pair typically stays together for life. Not just for a breeding season, for life. They recognize each other individually, they coordinate together. And they defend each other actively. The extended family structure goes even deeper. Young crows from previous seasons often stay near their parents and help raise the next generation of chicks. This is called cooperative breeding, and it is rare in the animal world. It means crow families accumulate shared knowledge over years. Pass from parent to child to grandchild. Think about what that means. A family of crows living near your neighborhood has been observing your street, your patterns, and your behavior for potentially longer than some of your neighbors have lived there. Their communication system reflects this social complexity. Researchers have identified well over 20 distinct vocalizations in American crows alone, different calls for different predators. Different calls for different levels of threat, a call that means gather here, a call that means leave now. A call that appears to function as a general alarm broadcast to the entire community. But the behavior that genuinely unsettles scientists is what happens when a crow dies, when a crow finds a dead crow. It will often call out loudly. Within minutes, other crows arrive. They gather around the body in silence or with soft vocalizations. They do not eat it, they do not scatter. They stay, sometimes for 30 minutes, sometimes longer, then they leave together. Scientists have studied this carefully. They believe part of the gathering serves a practical purpose. Learning where danger occurred, who or what caused the death. But the behavior goes beyond pure information gathering. There is a stillness to it, a quality that has no clean biological explanation. Some researchers are reluctant to use the word grief. Others are reluctant not to. The honest answer is that we do not fully know what is happening in those gatherings. What we do know is that crows remember the dead, and they remember who caused it. That memory does not fade. That memory, that loyalty, that fierce social bond, it all begins in a nest built with extraordinary care. Crow breeding season typically starts in early spring. A mated pair, remember these are lifelong partners, will choose a tall tree, often near the edge of a forest or in a well-positioned urban tree, and begin constructing a nest together. The nest is large, sturdy, and deliberately hidden from view. They use sticks for the outer frame and line the inside with softer material. Bark strips, grass, feathers, and sometimes paper or fabric found in human environments. The female lays between 3 and 9 eggs. She incubates them for roughly 18 days while the male brings her food. When the chicks hatch, they are completely helpless. Eyes closed, no feathers, totally dependent. Both parents feed them constantly. And here is where the family structure discussed earlier becomes critical. Older siblings from previous seasons join in. They help guard the nest, bring food, and watch for predators. A crow chick is raised by an entire family. Not just 2 parents. This cooperative system dramatically increases survival rates. Crow chicks that grow up with helpers are better fed, better protected, and grow faster than those raised by parents alone. But survival is never guaranteed. Crows face predation from hawks, owls, and larger raptors. Raccoons and snakes raid nests and take eggs. In urban environments, cars, glass windows, and electrical lines kill thousands of crows every year. Young crows in their first year have a mortality rate of around 50%. Half of all crow chicks born in spring will not survive to see the following spring. And here is the painful paradox. For most of human history, people actively hunted and poisoned crows. Farmers saw them as crop thieves. Communities held crow shoots in some parts of the United States. Organized crow hunting killed millions of birds across a few decades in the mid-20th century. The crows that survived learned which humans were dangerous. They taught their families. Those families taught the next generation. The intelligence that makes crows so remarkable is also the same intelligence that forced them to develop a long memory for human threats. We made them remember us, and they never stopped. Humans have never stopped watching crows, and for thousands of years. Long before any scientist put on a mask and walked across a campus, people sensed that something unusual lived inside these birds. In Norse mythology, the god Odin kept 2 ravens named Hugin and Munin. The names translate roughly to thought and memory. Every morning, Odin sent them out across the world. Every evening, they returned and whispered everything they had seen directly into his ears. Odin depended on them completely. He was afraid, the myths say, that one day they would not come back. Especially Munin, especially memory. The people who created that story had clearly spent a long time watching crows, across Native American traditions. The crow appears repeatedly as a trickster figure, intelligent, unpredictable, and deeply connected to the boundary between the living and the dead. In many East Asian cultures, a crow calling near a home was considered an omen, a message arriving from somewhere beyond ordinary understanding. In parts of Europe, crows landing on a rooftop signaled that something important was about to change. Nearly every culture that lived alongside crows arrived at the same conclusion independently. This bird knows something. Now move from folklore to modern science and the mysteries do not shrink, they get stranger. Researchers in Seattle documented a case where crows began bringing small objects, buttons, beads, pieces of foil to a specific young girl who had been regularly feeding them, not to her parents, not to strangers. Specifically to her over many months, scientists have no complete explanation for this behavior, gift. Giving of this kind has no clear survival benefit. It appears to be something closer to a social gesture. There are also documented cases of crows conducting coordinated harassment campaigns against specific humans for years after a single negative encounter. Not just one or two birds, entire local populations joining in generation after generation. With no first-hand knowledge of the original event, and then there are the mass roosting gatherings. In winter, crows from vast regions converge into roosts of hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of birds. What information passes through those roosts, what is being communicated, we genuinely do not know. Science has answered many questions about crows, but the deeper we look, the more questions appear. And the biggest one is still waiting. Here is the biggest question, while so many species are disappearing from this planet. Crows are not, they are doing fine. In fact, they are doing better than fine. The American crow is currently listed as a species of least concern by conservation authorities. Their population is stable. And in many urban regions it is actively growing. As forests are cleared and cities expand, most wildlife suffers. Crows adjust, they move in, they figure out the new rules and they thrive. This makes them one of the rarest things in the modern natural world. A wild animal that is genuinely winning in the age of humans. But winning does not mean untouched. Climate change is quietly reshaping crow behavior in ways scientists are only beginning to track. Warmer winters mean crows in some northern regions are no longer migrating south. Their seasonal patterns are shifting. The timing of their breeding season is moving earlier. Food availability is changing. The urban heat that crows have exploited for decades is intensifying, and even highly adaptable animals have limits. Some related species within the Corvidae family are not as fortunate. The Hawaiian crow, known locally as the alala, went extinct in the wild in 2002. A captive breeding program has reintroduced small numbers, but the species remains critically endangered. The Florida scrub jay faces serious habitat loss. The intelligence that defines this family did not protect every member of it. And that is the lesson crows offer us, if we are willing to hear it. We spent centuries assuming intelligence was our exclusive property. We assumed that memory, grief, deception, social learning, and long-term relationships were things only humans experienced in any meaningful way. Crows did not argue with us. They just kept watching, they kept learning, they kept passing knowledge to their children. They never needed our recognition to be what they are. The crow on the wire above you this morning already knew your face before you noticed it was there. It had already decided whether you were safe or dangerous. It had already filed you away in a memory that will outlast the season. We thought we were observing nature. Nature, it turns out, was observing us right back. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Wild World Explorer. If this story made you see the world a little differently, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you never miss what we explore next. The crows will be watching either way.